Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the January board meeting and welcome to the new year. Good to see everyone again. My name is Jo Lang. I am the communications specialist here at Opalco, and I will be your host for the member comment period this morning. As a reminder to all, we record these meetings and post them on our website. During the member comment period, members are invited to ask questions or share comments with the board, and we'll have some time at the end if there are any follow-up questions, as well as the chat will be monitored throughout the meeting. A few reminders before we get started. Please keep yourself muted unless you're speaking. To ask a question or make a comment, you can type your question or your topic into the chat, or you can use the raise hand function on your Zoom settings. Staff will put you into the queue and we'll have you unmute when your turn to speak comes up, and you will have up to 5 minutes to make your comments. The materials for today's meeting are posted online in our document library at opalco.com, and they are posted every month in the week preceding a board meeting. Before we jump into the comment period, I'll give you a couple of quick updates from the communications team. We are now accepting nominations for the Opalco Board of Directors. There are 2 positions open this year, one in District 1, which is the San Juan and surrounding islands district, and one in District 2, which is Orcas and the surrounding islands. Members who may be interested in running for the board can visit our Why Run page at www.opalco.com/whyrun, and I'll post all these links in the chat for you in a moment. You can get more information on eligibility, the application details, and the timeline as well. And you can also reach out to us at communications@opalco.com with any questions you have about the election or if you would like to express interest. We also are participating in a really exciting program right now. We've partnered with Community Energy Challenge and Sustainable Connections to provide commercial Opalco members with low-cost energy audits. Opalco commercial members can get an extensive energy audit done to identify any area in their business where energy might be being wasted. They can get recommendations on potential fixes and can even get help accessing incentive programs or grant funds as well for efficiency projects. There are only 9 spots remaining for this program, so now is the time to act. And I will paste that link as well on where to sign up for your business in the comment section. And lastly, check out this month's issue of Ruralite. You can read the digital copy or the physical copy that came to you in the mail. The featured title article is a recap of our Center Island cable installation project, which was a really exciting project for Opalco that we just wrapped up at the end of last year. And you can check out some really cool pictures and learn a little bit more about that project in there. So at this time, I would like to open the member comment period. I'd like to ask if there are any members who would like to make a comment or ask a question. You can paste that in the chat or you can use the raise hand button. All right, I see John Pierre. We'll go ahead and have you make a comment first.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Happy New Year. I'm John Pierre Van Dongen, resident of Orcas Island and a member of Opalco. I'm also speaking today as president of the board of the Friends of San Juans. I want to firstly thank you all for your leadership in a very important aspect of our lives. I want to acknowledge that the recent essential public facilities designation of the renewable energy going through the county. We at Friends opposed that designation, as I'm sure most of you know. But having been given that by the council, I want to express to the board of Opalco and our membership, everybody, that the Friends is going to look forward to collaboratively working with Opalco to, within the constraints of these now the essential public facilities, moving forward with implementation of renewable energy in our community. We at Friends support renewable energy. We want it done right, and we're very happy that Opalco's leadership has expressed to us that they also want to do it right. And so we look forward to working collaboratively with you moving forward. And I just want to express that again. Thank you very much for your leadership.
Thanks, JP.
All right. Do we have any other members who'd like to make a comment or ask a question at this time? All right. I am not seeing anything in the chat either. So this is going to conclude our member comment period. Thank you all for joining us and for your questions and comments. We will reopen again at the end of the meeting if it's necessary. And you can also utilize the chat function throughout the meeting. We will be monitoring the chat. Thank you. And if you would like to, if you don't already have your first and last name on your Zoom profile, please go ahead and add your first and last name so we know who you are if you have any questions. And we'll go ahead and get started with the meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Good morning, everybody. We'll start out this morning with our action items, consent agenda. I'm sure you've all had a chance to look through that, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the items in the consent agenda.
So moved.
Mark first. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Brian. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, that is approved. Okay, into discussion items. Number one, BPA Provider Choice Initiative, Foster.
Yeah, we officially have a new contract with Bonneville Power Administration. Want to thank Brian Silverstein. Brian, thanks for going down to Portland on our behalf and being part of that signing process. I know that was kind of fun for you coming out of Bonneville and really seeing the next generation of our contract. It's going to be through 2044. We're really lucky to have Bonneville Power Administration. Some of the lowest rates in the country are because of Bonneville Power Administration, and we're fortunate to have a new contract with them. So the new contract runs through 2024, as I just mentioned. There's a lot of information that's available, by the way. There's an appendix for those that are on the call. If you're kind of curious between the old contract versus the new one, we did a good breakout based on Bonneville's kind of summary of the two contracts, and that's listed in our appendix. So if you want to dive into any of the details, just from a high level perspective, just want to give everyone a really good understanding of what Bonneville does. Bonneville is a wonderful supplier in terms of their contract and their power. It's broken up into two different thresholds. There was something in the 1980s. It was the Power Act, and it provided us with preferential power treatment at a very low cost profile. And we know that as our tier one. So just kind of remember, tier one is really our low preference power that we get through Bonneville Power Administration. The difference in the new contract is there's the load growth component. We know that the hydro system is at full capacity. And where are we going to come up with any increasing load going forward? Now we have Bonneville acting on our behalf, and what they're going to be doing for a load following contract, at least for the next few years, is going to be providing us with assured power. What they will do is anything that's above tier one or load growth is going to be based on them going out to the market and contracting for that additional power. So just know that we're still going to have reliable power as long as it's available in the market. Will be provided that power. Now, it may be really expensive power if there's a lot of demand for power during a cold snap or so forth. When they go out to the market, we're going to be probably surprised at different intervals of what the cost of that power is going to be. In terms of the contract, though, I want to really everyone to understand what they do for us is they provide us with a really big fixed fee, if you will, and then they make adjustments on the margins. So what they'll do with our power contract, like we have our facility charge, theirs is called a composite charge. They charge us a big kind of composite rate, and then they make adjustments based on our actual usage profile and so forth. They're very clear about passing on the risk of that tier two power that we're talking about, and all that risk goes over to us. In addition, the risk goes to us if they have a low water year and so forth. Some of the particular changes that we're looking at for this contract, some are really good, some are really helpful, some not so much. But I really like that Bonneville has been working with us really well, listening to how we use power and see if they can provide us with some good wisdom. The first thing on the list is demand charges. Now, we used to be handled a little bit differently. Remember, we're still going to be a big composite rate and make adjustments, but our adjustments are going to be trying to get some transparency in the demand. You can kind of keep it up there, if you will. In the demand side, we want to see pricing signals. Now, if we can get pricing signals, what we can do is we can adjust our rate intervals that allow us to have people have our membership realize that if it's going to be a high period of cost for the power, then maybe we could steer away from that. And having those pricing signals probably be a little bit better for us to really go through the new contract. And we got to work out the details with that. But suffice it to say, any transparency that we can get into when that higher demand charge is going to be visible and incurred by us, and if we can get out in front of it and notify our membership, that's our goal, is to really get those pricing signals. Load shaping is a little bit differently handled in this contract. There's really what you do is it's those credits and the true ups and so forth that are really going to get our billing accurate with how much we use. Bonneville's a kind of a slow moving machine, if you will. And we actually come up with a rate profile. Excuse me, Vince. And we actually come up with a rate profile that is 2 years in advance. And that's why there's some true up and some charges and credits that take place after the fact. Load shaping is one of those charges. Renewable energy credits, those are really good. I mean, there's something also at the bottom of it, establishing some credits for us. I know that when we're dealing with Washington State, we have some carbon attribute penalties that we have to pay. And working with Bonneville as the main power provider for us is going to be important for us to figure out how to treat Washington State differently than maybe some of the other states that don't have those carbon penalties. So we're working through the details of that. We're still having conversations about billing and attributes and some of the fine tuning of the contract provisions, but here's what they are. Let's kind of roll down a little bit. There's a compliance attribute that's associated with the new contract. It's working with the Western Resource Adequacy Program. We've all been in the industry, we're pretty nervous about the status of the grid. We see a lot more demand for power. We hear about it in the newspapers all the time about data centers and different load growth profiles. We're predicted to have load growth just in Opalco about 30% more power usage. And to combat that, we got to address that. And taking the first step is relying on a program that we can all join together. It's a Western Resource Adequacy Program to make sure that we have the resources available. If they're not with Bonneville, there's a requirement for us to make sure that we can go out there and either build them ourselves or figure out how to contract for them. I think it's going to be a learning curve. So the compliance portion of their contract has still got to be ironed out in some of those details. Member generation, this was big for us. There was Bonneville really wasn't helping us a lot in the last contract, but they really have stepped up to the plate in the next contract and allow us to build more generation behind the meter. So if we want to do a solar project, multiple solar projects, we can do that to a threshold of 5 megs, which is megawatts, which is a pretty good charge. We can also go up to some larger project, go to a megawatt for a single project. There is a need, however, and we got to be very clear about it, is when you have a solar project and the sun goes down, we're still going to have to bring them firm power. So it's one of the requirements that we got to be very cognizant of is how do we firm that block up for nighttime hours? We talk a lot about microgrids. What's a microgrid? It's really solar with a battery. So when we provide that power back into the grid that goes into Bonneville's grid that we use, we got to make sure that we firm it up, is what we call it. So there's 24/7 power available in our renewable generation projects going forward.
Foster, a question before we move on. A question about this in the POC comparison document in the board materials.
Right.
It said that it increases the power threshold from the 200 kilowatt to a megawatt that need to be listed in the contract. So how did they? Obviously, if we build a resource in 2030, we won't be able to pre-list it in the. What does that mean?
What we need to do is add it. We need to add it as soon as we're aware of it, Mark. Okay. So but what before we did is we had pretty small little bite-sized projects that we could bring in, and we have a requirement amongst our membership that whatever the constraints are placed on us by Bonneville, we pass those through to our members. So we couldn't have members, putting in projects larger than 200 kW. Now we're looking at a megawatts. This is wonderful for us to actually bring in projects that are larger in size, and those are the increments. So instead of just a 200 kW, now it's a megawatt, but you can go up to 5 of those megawatts, and you add them as they come online.
Gotcha. So it's just that language is just a notification requirement. We have to tell Bonneville about the projects, but we don't have to have them all listed out today.
That's correct. And then we need to work with Bonneville. Think about it from Bonneville's perspective. There's a lot of utilities out there, and they're trying to make sure that they have reliability and everything works.
Sure. Yeah.
And so there's some studies and some other things that occur depending on where you're located and where your connection points are to the grid. And some of those end up in customer charges that we need to pass along to the membership.
Yeah, that's fine. My main concern was just, do we need to be able to list community solar projects even though we're not yet constructing, right?
Yeah. Good question. Thanks, Mark.
I have a question also, which is about the tier 1 power and how much tier 1 power we're going to have, because this contract goes for many, many years and we have all this growth that's going on. So just wondering if you can comment on that, of where that line is going to be, where we go from tier 1 to tier 2, especially in the future.
Yeah, really good question. So our allocation, the way that they were measuring it was, I guess let me frame it up this way. Our contract is pretty much the same. Bonneville is going to be passing along all the risk. It's a large fixed rate contract with adjustments on the margins. Make sure that's really clear. When it comes to our tier 1, it's pretty much the same, Wendy. So we're always about 25 average megawatts. Now, reality, I think we've been decremented a little bit over time, and I think we're at like, what is it, Russell? 24.7 or 24.6.
You're correct. Yes.
You know that number?
Yeah.
So it's gone down a little bit, Wendy, over time, depending on what the capacity is. Picture, one particular dam, even though it's made up of a bunch, and then we get a little slice of whatever that is with our brother, and everyone gets their own little slices. And ours is 24.6 or whatever the number is. And then anything above that is where we have to make sure that we have planning in place, working with PNGC, our power provider, that we're part of a cooperative group together, and making sure that we could either fill that position or have Bonneville make sure that they fill that position through our load following contract. And the neat thing is we can add in renewable generation to that with a lot of flexibility for the tier 1, as long as we're growing. So as long as you're growing, adding in, the threshold that we're looking at with that last bullet, that basically just gets subtracted before load following expenses are incurred on Bonneville's behalf for us.
Right. No. So I'm wondering about this for 2 reasons, but obviously we want to add our community solar and match our load growth with renewables. But what I was trying to figure out is, on the economics of doing that, what is the offset cost? Is it tier 2 power or is it tier 1 power under the new contract? Because I don't understand. Can we get more? Can we raise that limit on tier 1 as our population goes up? Or is it something where we own this slice and that's all we ever get?
We own that slice and that's all we ever get. There's a lot of competition for that cheap power, Wendy. And that's, we're not going to be building, or Bonneville's not going to be building any more dams. So that was our allocation. If anything, it's probably going to dwindle down a little bit as we go. There's also what they did. This is kind of getting into the details that you can see in the appendix, but they actually put a cap on the system, meaning if you have, before there was a lot of flexibility when it came to the water years, and if you had a really great water year, the system would adjust with a little bit more flexibility. What Bonneville would do is sell that power on the market, and we would benefit that along with all the rest of the tier 1 members, if you will. Now what they're doing is they're putting in a hard line about, now it's like 7,500. I think the number's out here.
7,250.
Yeah, 7,250. They put a hard line number out there, and anything above that they sell on the market. What they're trying to do is get flexibility so they could firm up some renewable power. So it's a little bit of a nuanced difference. I think that having the system backing up intermittent resources like renewables and different generating resources is a good thing, but I don't think that's going to be a really positive to us because we're going to miss out on some of the additional dollars for resale that they're going to get. I think it's a good contract. I really do. I think that they're listening, and I think they're balancing a lot of different pros and cons, and really trying to help. The RSS, and there's so many acronyms in the Bonneville contract stuff. That's that firming cost that we would incur if you put in an intermittent resource onto the grid. You got to firm it up for them.
Foster, you might be getting to this, but it seemed like there was some recognition of the JOE, the joint operating entity, but I'm not clear, given the impenetrable thicket of abbreviations, I'm not quite sure where it all nets out for PNGC.
Good question, Mark. So just to start a little bit back for those that are on the call. So a JOE that was referred to by Mark as a joint operating entity. And I think there's like 2 of them that I'm aware of within our region that Bonneville is working with. This is what a great situation a co-op can produce. Back in early 2000, what occurred was our power provider that we have that handles our contract with Bonneville is known as PNGC. What they did is we're a group of 24 other co-ops that are part of that, and we're collectively probably the largest power user within Bonneville. But we weren't really treated that way. If you looked at PSE, they use a lot more power. They have million, hundreds of thousands of meters, and are benefiting tremendously from their volume. And what PNGC did back in the early 2000s, they went back to Congress in Washington, D.C. and say, hey, can you give us a little bit of clarity in something called a JOE, a joint operating entity, whereby we're treated as one, kind of like a PSE is. We're treated as one, and we're able to trade power around just amongst our individual utilities, so we could kind of operate the same thing as a large utility. And lo and behold, Congress really listened. It was back in a different day, right? Congress listened, and then we actually got JOE status through PSE, and that allows us to trade power and share power. The benefits of that, Mark, are not as transparent in the current contract that we have, unless we change into something that's called a block and slice product. Right now, because in order to really take advantage of the JOE, you need to generate a lot of your own resources.
Right.
And if you do, then you could actually really kind of trade off and maximize whatever that usage profile is. We don't have a lot of generation going on yet, but there are a lot of plans within PNGC to move forward with different energy alternatives. And as we get a hold of more and more of those generating alternatives in our portfolio, there's probably going to be a point in time where it's going to be our collective benefit to transfer from a load following product like you see on the screen. Load following is one, block with shape is another one, and then slice is the third. We'll probably be in a benefit to go into the block with shaping attributes to really maximize the JOE. It'll benefit us as soon as we get into that, but load following is really, you're restricted to allowing Bonneville to provide all the power that we need, which is, by the way, a wonderful thing.
And the contract allows us to make that transition, not at a contract boundary, but just at any time by election.
With the way that the new contract works with Bonneville is we get a one-time only, and that's all we would need. Once we get into a threshold where PNGC has enough load growth for the tier 2 portion of our collective contracts, then we are going to be making that one-time only decision to move into a block shape. We've had some really good conversations with TEA and some other industry experts down at PNGC to really see the benefits that go along with the block and shape, that we could take care of our own destiny, but only when we get enough generation on our own to provide that load.
Gotcha.
Good question.
Yeah, actually, I was going to talk about that also. There's a table that with more information, small letters, all sorts of details. And I was quite surprised to see that there were 9 sections on the JOE. And so I read all of them. I read them twice. I still don't understand what it means, but obviously it sounds like PNGC has been working on that, but it sounds like we have some opportunity in the future, which is really great.
We do, and it's all going to be about having PNGC kind of grow up into a really sufficient generation and transmission utility on our behalf, and that's when the magic will happen with PNGC. And believe me, they're aware of it. They manage our collective tier 1 projects or tier 1 loads, but really the value is going to be in that tier 2 load growth that we go.
Foster,
Foster, when we get into that scenario, does our contract still remain with BPA, or are we then contracted directly to PNGC?
Right now, our contract is through PNGC. What we do is we hand over our contract that's individually through Bonneville, and then they manage it on our behalf. So they're going to still, maintain control over that contract, so we could really optimize that Joe status when it's time. There's still some, by the way, Brian mentioned some other things that go along with a Joe, and we'll be able to take advantage of certain attributes. It's just that the biggest winner that we're going to have is in the future when we transfer over to block with some shaping profiles. Does that answer your question, Jerry?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Foster, got a question. I'm a little confused on the tier 1, tier 2 methodology. How do they determine when you're past tier 1? I mean, our number is 215,000 megawatt hours per year, but do they wait until we run into that number for the year, or is it on a monthly basis, or how's it done?
It's really on a monthly basis. So what we do is, by the way, we're working, there's been some really good comments by different members every once in a while that we have conversations. And we're trying to figure out kind of where you're going, Vince. If we know where the line is from between tier 1 and tier 2, then we could maximize or notify our members where we are in the mix. And figuring out that dividing line, the answer to your question is monthly. And what we're trying to do is trying to get visibility into where that transition occurs so we can notify our members. Russell, for instance, we've been talking about, maybe putting in a resource on our website so we can see when we go past that line, if you will. Any thoughts you have, Russell, you want to jump in there with?
No, it's just it is a little complicated because once you're like right now we're purchasing an average 1.6 megawatts in the tier 2 market because we're over our forecast thresholds, and there's obligated purchases when it comes to that. In our current contract, the future contract is yet to be well defined as to what portion of our resource, but like Foster was saying, our portion of the system keeps dwindling. The new contract seems to have a fixed amount, but we'll see how they actually administer.
Yeah. So what Bonneville does is they're working through the billing side of it. That's really getting down into the weeds a little bit, and we're looking forward to hearing the results of that, so we could look at their monthly allocations, start setting up a little program or tracking mechanism within our website, and then know when we are getting close to that number. And if we're getting, in the real expensive power area, our hope is that we could notify everybody and say, hey, cut back on some appliances, really use your energy wisely, put on a sweater, that kind of stuff. And maybe we could help minimize, or collectively as a membership, help minimize some of those costs.
And then it's the monthly. I just want to follow on to that same question, because this is really key, is where we go from tier 1 to tier 2 for the people's monthly bills. So is that tier 1 the same every month? Is it our total divided by 12, or do we get more tier 1 in the winter when our members need more power?
I'm going to try to step out there a little bit. Just know this, Wendy, what our contract with Bonneville goes in a 2-year increment. And then we make adjustments along the way. And then there's another contract adjustment every 2 years. So it's really summary level. And it's been a challenge for us to try to get that clarity that you're asking about. And so is Vince. And that's what we're trying to get within the billing cycle. There's nothing easy about a bureaucratic bill that's as easy as you just painted. It sounds like it would be really, kind of common sense for us, but it's not so much yet. But the billing side is what we're really going to be diving into the details when those components are known a little bit better than they are. Remember, the first thing was to go through the contract and then let the billing be the next thing that we're really going to try to tackle within our own utility. So it's really on a monthly basis, and we get an allocation higher in the wintertime and lower in the summertime. So it kind of balances what our load is. Trying to get visibility and track that is what we're going to try to get something that's a little bit more user friendly for our members, if that helps.
Also, the prices, I haven't looked at a contract in a while, but the prices that we get per kilowatt hour vary monthly too. That's a U-shaped curve. So we pay a lot more in the wintertime than we do in the summer.
Yeah, I mean, so make sure that we're really clear. So we're, treading along in our tier 1 allocation, and we're doing pretty well. And then all of a sudden there's a cold snap, say February comes around. The billing adjustments that we're going to be seeing are going to be based on what Bonneville has to go out to the market, buy whatever that power is. If there's a lot of demand really cold, we're going to be fighting with all the rest of the utilities trying to get a hold of that power to make sure that we have reliability. And so is everybody else. And the cost of that kilowatt hour at that stage are going to be pretty dramatic. So really dialing in the number on a real-time basis is going to be a big challenge for us based on the way that Bonneville's billing is set up. But if we could at least know when we're going from tier 1 to tier 2, maybe there's some predictive elements in there that we could start accumulating to estimate what those high prices are, depending on what the market is. So I think it's going to get exciting for us, but be patient for a little bit. Good questions. Any other questions? That's about all I have with the contract, because by the way, great information that's available. I'm sure the board has read everything in the appendix, and it goes, a comparison of before versus after with a new contract. There's other information that's available through Bonneville that we've forwarded you that's really, in their verbiage on what they want to move forward with. But I think we've got some really good information to communicate to you guys and the members.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay, next item.
Thank you very much for that. Our next topic was pretty exciting to go through. We've completed our member survey. By the way, there we go. Thank you for that. Our member survey is back out, and we provided all the information on our website. Let me give you a good understanding of what's available on our website. We put the whole member survey itself, and we a lot of the survey goes through comments, right? We have an open field on comments. Krista, how many pages of comments? There was a lot of comments on this one. I think there's
91 pages of this. If you can see, I have the document up here, is the results, and then at the end of that is the comments.
Thank you for that. So I mean, really extensive member service. We posted everything on our website, and the survey, the survey people were really good. What they did is they conducted it we wanted everybody to have the ability to voice whatever their preferences were. So the survey people came up with a concept of, let's do one that's statistically relevant, captures the kind of the population base that's most beneficial for, your standard processes within a survey. And so what they did is they actually called our members, and their goal was to get 300 people responding back to be statistically relevant, so they could track them and slice them depending on income and different demographics. In addition to that, we wanted to make sure that all of our members had a chance to chime in. So we opened it up as the ability for everybody to comment. And then we got 900 responses from that. So we got 300 plus 900. They're separated out. So as you go through the information, you can kind of see the difference between the 300 and the total 900. And then the comments are separated out into two classes as well. But generally speaking, I think it's a really robust survey they went through. I don't want to go through all the details because there's 91 pages of this, and I know you guys have had a chance to peruse it all. Suffice it to say, why don't we just concentrate on, why don't we go where you just were, Krista? There you go. Why don't we just, I think go up a little bit. I think these are the key takeaways, right? Yeah. Okay. There we go. Let's just concentrate on the key takeaways. The, everyone loves, as far as I'm concerned, the co-op model is the best we're ever going to get. We're committing to providing, reliable energy. That's what we're here for. We're always striving to make sure that we provide good services to our members. Doing these surveys allows us to really confirm that we're addressing the concerns of our members and doing a good job. We always like to ask how are we doing for you, to our membership. 94% of our customers are satisfied with the services we've been providing. And that's very consistent with a co-op world, as opposed to an IOU that has, less satisfaction percentages than that. The heart of the survey that I like to take away is the number 2 here, is maintaining, and reliable service. And really the takeaway that I have is it's really important for our members to have reliability. When I first came here in 2006, and then when we got into the whole internet business, we're making a commitment to our members. And when we step out there with the internet, here was my takeaway when we got into that. I know Vince and Jerry were around. When we start providing connections for people to have internet at home, there's the assumption that they're going to be working from home in our service territory. And if we don't have reliable power and reliable internet with it, wow, we're really undermining our overall effort. So we step up and we make a commitment to doing that. So we take that very serious. And I'm really proud of everybody at Opalco and the board and our linemen and are just the heroes to provide this kind of level of service. So a service that we have to our members. 98 are, it's really important for us to keep those, costs down, to making sure that we have, 82% building local energy resources is very high. Making sure that we have, minimize our power disruptions. We have 82%. So those are really solid. Here's what the members' expectations are of Opalco, and us committing to that is really essential for us. How we're going to move forward in providing that essential service in power certainty really is going to use every tool in our toolbox. And I think that's my big takeaway that I see is we're all here for the right reason. We're here from the environmental and aesthetic beauty of our community, and we want to make sure that we safeguard that and use every tool in our toolbox to make sure that we can provide reliable energy and protect that environment in the same way. We know that future outages are becoming a big concern with us. We have highlighted the fact that the grid on the mainland is getting precarious at best. There's not a lot of new load being put on the system. I mean, a lot of new load is being put on the system. Not a lot of generation is being put on the regional system that we have on the mainland. That's going to be a recipe for disaster. Knowing that allows us to really be innovative. And I think that we always got to use our creativity hats. I know when I first came here, the problem was, outages, right? Opalco has been amazing, right? When we originally had, before I came here, outages were all tree related. And so what did people do? It's like you were either all out or you were all up. In a tree that went through our system, you knocked either the whole system down or not. And a lot of people had generators in their garages. And that's how they really, if you could afford to do that, that's what they had. The people that couldn't afford it obviously couldn't. And you'd have to suffer through an outage. What Opalco has done has been brilliant over the years. The board back in 89 and 90 undergrounded all of our distribution systems. I think we're 90% of our distribution systems are underground. All of our transmission systems are above ground because that's more an operational benefit to be above ground. But the decisions that we've made go along with how important it is for us to minimize some of the outages. Now what we've been able to do is we've undergrounded. We keep our right-of-way trimming also to prevent forest fires. And I think we're benefiting tremendously from all that undergrounding back in the day and keeping our right-of-ways trimmed up and using technology to only have small portions of our grid out at a particular time, not all out or all on. And I think as we go forward, we got to be very concerned about what's going to go on with the mainland grid. It's not going to be an outage isn't really necessarily going to be caused by just the trees going in. That's going to be a big impact on our transmission system, and we'll always have that. But it's those regional outages that we need to start planning for and developing. When I said we got to use all the tools in the toolbox, we're going to be looking at doing as many microgrids and adding batteries and really trying to figure out how to get reliable power even when the sun goes down. And I think that's going to be the big challenge. And I really, the big takeaway that I have from this survey is, people are relying on us, and we need to really get out there and make sure that we have the resources available to do the best that we can, knowing that mainland grid's going to be a little bit more precarious. Let's go to the next page.
Foster?
Yeah.
No, Mark, you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. I loved the survey result, that middle block, right? It is on the previous page. It does show, however, that people want something that they actually can't have, right? Fast, cheap, and good. You can choose two, but not all three, right? And the preference was that, we have to keep costs down, but we need lots of reliability and et cetera. And I think that's going to be that we still face the community, even with the survey results, we still face the communication challenge of making sure that people understand that we will need to invest, right? I'm not saying anything that we all haven't discussed many times, but the survey results for me, they were very encouraging, but they also showed that people don't understand the trade-offs.
Well said. I think that's going to be part of it, is for us to really communicate how we're going to manage our mission.
Right.
But I also I want to make sure that people know that we got their backs, right? And then we're going to look to whatever we need to in order to do that and communicate when we have big financial outlays. The thing that I really liked, Mark, back in the day was when they did the undergrounding fee. When I first got here, it was like the end of the undergrounding fee that got that distribution line to all those underground. That board really stepped up to the plate and said, hey, we got a cost that's really going to impact us. Mm-hmm. How are we going to keep this up? And coming up with an independent rate, it was, I believe that there was a lot of investigation done, a lot of community meetings that were taking place at that time. And it gave the confidence for the board to make that additional cost allocation. If you would have, I bet you, if anything, if you would have asked, do you want us to keep costs down? And, the typical three: reliability, cost, and environmental stuff. And I would say you probably would have seen the same kind of profile in a survey, knowing that they want to keep costs of, getting the support crucial for us going forward. As we spend those dollars, are going to be essential for us to keep the power on. Well said.
Foster, let me make a comment, because Mark brings up a really good point about, the education issue. We're not the only one with this problem. The state's got it in spades. And I've come to that conclusion. I did a deep dive over the weekend, because to simplify this, the state has got a bipolar split in its mentality. And if you look at it, I mentioned this before, the GMA was put in, and the GMA basically says, don't build anything anywhere, anytime, for any reason. We got to preserve everything. And CETA comes in and says, well, you got to transition the grid over to renewable energy by such and such date. And also you can't make anybody pay for it. And that's the reality. And so when you look at it, the 2021 energy strategy, looking at the greenhouse gas reduction and everything like that. And when you dig into, okay, what's the reality behind the ambitious statements that the state government's putting out? And there isn't a lot. For an example, the fiasco going on right now with the Centralia coal plant. It's in theory was supposed to be shut down on December 31st. The Department of Energy issued an emergency order to keep it running, but there's no coal to run it. It's not actually running right now. It's in a kind of a warm standby if they wanted to get it started up again. Nobody in Washington State's allowed to purchase the power from it. So, it's like, well, this is a cluster F of the first magnitude. And you ask the question, well, where's where's the power coming from to replace it? And, we're kind of lucky right now. And people say, well, we're going to do all this renewable wind and solar, and say, excellent. How many megawatts? When is it going to happen? So you go over to EFSCC, the environment, the Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council, and look at it's like 11 projects that have been stalled for years. There's only 200 megawatts of renewable energy scheduled to come online in 2026 in Washington. I extended the search to Oregon and Idaho, and it's a very similar thing. So you look at the BPA's 2025 White Book, the PNUCC's loads forecast and stuff. The utilities raising the flag that says, we got a problem here. The loads are growing faster and the renewables aren't in place. The legislature is not getting it. There are 600 pre-filed bills for the 2026 session. Only 21 of them have got anything to do with energy. And most of them are trying to figure out how to keep, low income people from having to pay more for the energy and some odds and ends, but there's nothing in there that really says, what are we going to do about the resource adequacy and how are we going to fund it? So the reality on the ground does not match the flowery language that's going on. And I'm not sure how to get that message out, because that's one that the legislature is avoiding talking about in spades. The media is only starting to come up with it. You're seeing more articles in the Seattle Times now about, gee, the CCA funding isn't going where we thought it was, and they're now spending 500 million of it on the low income working family tax credit instead of going into any kind of greenhouse gas reduction or grid transition. So the headlines hide a lot of problems behind it there, and that's something we're gonna have to wrap our minds around. So, and that's just what Mark says. You can have it cheap, fast, and reliable. You can have two out of the three. And the state says, well, all three of them come at no cost and no problem for anybody. So you keep that in mind as we move forward, because it's a tough challenge.
Well, you're not kidding. I mean, the big elephant in the room is permitting.
Right.
For us to really get out there and build as an industry, as a region, you see a lot of hope, and hope's not a strategy, as we all know. And the people think that they can go out and build different renewable projects. And reality is there's a lot of pushback from environmental communities and so forth not to go forward with particular projects. It's amazing how many projects are in differing stages of not going forward. And I think that's really problematic when you combine that with the load growth projections for AI and the data centers that we're all hearing. I don't think those, from my perspective, I think Washington State has really got to raise their, they got to open their eyes. A grid transitionary resource would be to make sure that there's enough natural gas being utilized until we have an alternative. We don't even have an alternative, but we're just really penalizing anything with carbon, even though it's dramatically less than your coal production that's going on. So I think that we need to really wake up as a region, and I think that's going to happen. The reality is we're going to end up in a situation where we're going to have a blackout, and I think that'll be a big change. And I think that people are going to go, wait a minute, are you really planning well? I go to Olympia and I lobby. We're part of an organization called WRCA, and we raise this topic up all the time. One of the thing that I was most disheartened about is I go to a legislator that's on the energy committee and I say, hey, there's a problem in reliability. And I mentioned all the reports that you did, Vince, of this is now common discussion. And the person came back and said, well, don't let a good energy emergency go to waste, meaning, well, we'll just wait for the power to go out and then we'll start adjusting accordingly. And I was mortified. I got to tell you, I couldn't even believe that came out of a person on the energy committee's mouth. But that's how misguided I see things are going on in Olympia. We're starting to get out. We're starting to hear a lot of legislators kind of come into some alternatives, but I think the volume needs to go up before, we should get out there before these things happen and there's power outages rather than wait until after the fact. It really has me a little bit taken back. I've been asked to be on a think tank group about permitting, and I'm going to be given a speech, I think sometime in February, about the big gorilla the big elephant in the room, which is the whole thing about not being able to get a permit. And I think that's going to be part of the issue too. I know that Governor Inslee started FSEC. It was trying to get a streamlined permitting process through. And lo and behold, I think those hopes were just not realized. There were still enough legal challenges to stop pretty much every project that's out there. And I don't have the answer. What I do know to get those project permits off the ground, Vince, that's what I don't know what the answer is. But I think we better start being creative or we're going to get caught behind the 8 ball. The neat thing about Opalco, and I'm really proud of this, is when we started like the broadband business, what we did is we said we were going to have to put some poles up. And we really took it to heart. We committed to not placing a lot of communication infrastructure in the air that was going to be in view corridors on, mountain ridges and so forth. We did a heck of a job. And I'd say that, we're going to have to make some of those trade-offs as a community for renewable generation in order to, keep that reliability functions up. And we need to have that and be innovative with, maybe we do need to start thinking about, personal generators, if that's in your wheelhouse and you need to start, making sure you have power reliability. If you're working from home and the power goes out, we can't just look to the Washington state to solve the problems. We got to look internally and say, how do we plan for this right and do it right? So, we can figure out what the needs are of individual members and really allow those decisions to make so we can keep reliability for those who really, really need it initially, and then really get better and better at it as we go forward. So I think we're up for the task. I think it's a really hard task. And I think there's a lot of forces against this, Vince, but we still need to stay the course.
Yeah.
I'm getting into the trade. I mean, I just want to get into the kind of the key takeaways. Good information. I think we all know, this is kind of inherent is we love our island. We're all here for the right reason. We want to make sure that we protect it and we do have the environmental protections in place as we develop renewable generation, because that's what the survey is all about. And we know that when we get into essential public facilities that JP brought up earlier, we know that those county safeguards for environmental protection processes are in place. Even for the essential public facilities, we still got to go through building permits that are, groundwater. I mean, everything to go through your whole permitting process really ticks every box that I can see. The only difference in essential public facilities is at some point we need to place it, and we can't just keep kicking the can down the road for all the different locations. But that doesn't mean the environmental safeguards aren't in place for, where we're proposing to put renewable generation projects. So I think that it's good to hear that we're looking at the bell curve, right? When we go to survey, the neat thing about a survey is it looks at all of our membership and really gets a good statistically relevant bell curve. So we know what all the members think, not just the vocal, groups, because what we see is there's a lot of NIMBYism, not in my backyarders. Is a lot of people that I talk to are, I'm in favor of renewable generation. I like to see a lot of microgrids being developed, just not here. But everyone says just not here, which results in just not anywhere. And that's what we need to navigate through and have some pretty thick skin within Opalco to make sure that we balance that reliability with the dollars that Mark brought up, with the environmental and the aesthetic, and we really do a good job on where we want to place this. Every time, and I've been saying this a lot, every time the county issues a new building permit for a new residential building, there are times where we don't have the power. And we need to make sure that we have the confidence that we can provide that power, because we're making a commitment to our membership that we're going to really get you that power. I'm really serious about it. And we got to be innovative on what it really takes place. But I think the neat thing about the county council right now is they're in support with what we need to do in order to provide that reliable power, which is really, I think the world of the current council. They're doing a great job, and we need their help desperately. I think that all the rest of the project takeoffs, the second one down here with the context to allow for renewable generation to prevent those outages. I think we're getting that educational component up with our members, and the members are going, wow, if we really are going to have outages, we need to do something. And we're starting to see those in the survey numbers that we have before us. There's a lot of caution though. Members are looking at us and they're saying, we need this, but do a good job and make sure that you don't mess up our, unique environmental, all the attributes that we're looking at. We're the environmental epicenter is the way I look at it in the US, and we got to treat ourselves accordingly. I think we go on the next page. And here's the support for the renewable generation. As long as we have those guardrails in place for protecting our environment, I think we're hearing a really consistent message from our membership. Reliability is really good, but don't mess anything up along the way. And the dollars has, I think what we need to do is keep reporting back to the members and say, if we invoke something like this, it's going to cost us more and more as we go. The one thing I would say, in defense of where Mark's going, we don't have the most streamlined cooperative, like on the mainland, which on the mainland, you'd have a, rectangular, service territory, and you'll probably just need you probably need a handful of substations, one crew facility, one office. Here, based on serving 20 islands with complex submarine cables connecting the islands together, our maintenance component is dramatic. And, just making sure that we provide reliable power on the surface before we get into new local renewable generation is an expensive proposition for us. And the labor component that we have, making sure that we have, really qualified people within OPALCO to serve our members is, it is going to be an economic challenge for us just to maintain our system, let alone, branch into more microgrids as we go. So it's always going to be a challenge for us. But I think if we do a good job communicating with the membership with Krista and Joe's expertise, I think we're going to do okay. People love our newsletter, by the way. That's the most common communication piece that is preferred by our members. So. And then I don't want to get into the details, but you can kind of see those. There's some really good information that other people could use when they go through surveys. We got some good demographic information and some other takeaways that people could utilize. And again, all that stuff's on our website. Any thoughts or questions, Vince?
Anybody there?
I thought the feedback on that last summary slide about you don't have to bring it necessarily back up, but right there, people are supportive of the push to adjust permitting. And of course, the rubber, as Vince has been talking about for a long time, the rubber's going to hit the road when some of the permitting, the regulations come up before the county council. And, given the fact that everybody here swears that they read our newsletter, whether they do or not, we need to use that to make a big push to get the members to communicate to the council their support of those permitting regulation changes, right?
Yeah.
We need that push. I mean, I know that I know that you're sharing these results with the survey results with the council, and that's great, but they're going to need to see the letters, right, from people when the time comes. So, and I'm sure you're already thinking about that and communicating.
On that note, Mark, I think it's really good to really use us as the launching board too. Everybody, on the board as well. But I know Vince and I were planning to go before the county council. Now that we have the survey results in hand, that we can communicate the large bell curve of our entire membership on, how reliable energy is going to be.
Absolutely. We totally should do that. And I know you were already planning to do that. I mean, I think my only point is really just that, that I don't mean to sound cynical here, but politicians make decisions more easily when their spines are stiffened by a lot of letters indicating public support.
Yep.
Right. So we need to basically have some sort of way, we received a lot of great letters of support during the first wave of the Baylor Hill project, right? We've seen some of those letters of support. We need to see that again, basically.
Yeah, I really like where you're going with that, Mark. You have a good sense for the membership and getting that feedback. I think, one of the next pushes we're going to be doing is going to be looking to our members, right? I mean, we can't afford, we're not the, you've heard me say we're not the Bank of Opalco. We're only what we're only what our members represent. And if we can ask the, kind of like the Preservation Trust, if we can ask our members, hey, if you have extra land to donate for renewable generation, that's going to be something I really am curious to whether or not we can get the county council support, maybe even get a tax break for those who put their land in so we could build more renewable generation without pricing it out of the market. So it's so expensive, we just can't afford it. So really getting the membership engaged in that, I think those conversations will add to the precariousness of what we're faced with as well. And hopefully we can get some good angels out there that are willing to assist with us building some of these really essential services. But you're right, communications is going to be something that's going to be ongoing and really important.
Also, could I bring up another issue here, which I think we need to address, and that is the affordability of the power we're providing. I think it's becoming more and more of a problem with the 5 to 6% increase we have every year, but we're still saying we're providing affordable power. As we know, the key to this is that we're providing electric energy at cost, and that's what affordability really means. And I think we need to probably start addressing that side of the affordability equation rather than just saying, this is the cheapest power you're going to get anywhere in the world type of thing.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. We know the power rates are going to go up. We know the tier 2 power is going to go up. It's just a matter of supply and demand. When your supply doesn't keep up with demand, the costs are going to go up. So that's really a good nuance that we could take advantage of, Jerry. One thing I will say in support of what we've been doing up till now is every time we do have a rate increase, we want to make sure that it doesn't satisfy everybody, but we have probably two robust programs for our members in need. And I wish we could extend those to more and more of our members. But every time we do have a rate increase, we want to make sure that the assistance programs also have that same metric put on to support, some of those, those escalations in cost. And I think we all should be really proud of that. I don't think we were ever done. We were hoping to get that low income solar program so we could get the solar that was going to be generated on behalf of that low income grant was going to go into our assistance program so we could provide more and more service to them as we go. So hopefully we can kind of keep chasing down those grants and do a better job to keep it affordable. But you're right, that's what a co-op is all about. We wouldn't even have power out here if it weren't for the co-op industry, because Puget Sound Energy wouldn't want anything to do with a 20 island service territory connected with 25 submarine cables to 3 crew facilities. It's really providing that power at cost is what allows us to provide such good service to our members. So thanks for pointing that out again, Jerry.
Yeah. So if we can put more emphasis on how we sell these rate increases every year, I think it will be beneficial.
Yeah, good point.
The other thing that I think that would be good going forward is to really focus on batteries and batteries for the members in various different ways. Having just been down in California and staying in a household that has a Tesla Powerwall that's hooked up to the PG&E, where they can completely manage their tier 2 versus tier 1 power. So simply saying put on a sweater is really different than being able to provide a lot of information, a lot of opportunities for people to put batteries in and be able to manage these fluctuations in power costs that way. And not just batteries, I'd also like to see us get really proactive around bidirectional car charging, because that's a way we have a lot of EVs out here. That's a way people with EVs can use their EV jointly as a battery as well as as their mode of transportation. So I'm just in favor of our really doing a lot with batteries and bidirectional charging.
Yeah, I really like that. I know the technology is getting better and better, Wendy. So I really like the thought of doing the bidirectional. I think that's going to be good. I'm probably the most proud of the program. You know, I hate it when a lot of utilities just complain that, oh my God, the costs are going up, but don't have any options. The neat thing that we're doing with our Switch It Up program is pretty unique, and it allows people to get the capital from us at a really small interest rate to make sure that we could put in some of those energy conservation and reliability measures now when it comes to batteries and so forth, and utilizing our Switch It Up funds where you pay it back on your power bill over 10 years. So we just had a conversation. Travis has been chasing down that REST program for another tranche or another drawdown to get additional funds available. So we have solutions for people to take advantage of, if they're in a situation where we could have them borrow the funds and pay them back over the next 10 years. So we got to keep those programs in place too, because I agree with you. I think those are really going to be essential for us. And when I say we need every tool in the toolbox, boy, you're not kidding. I think we need just about everything we can think of to try to make sure that we can provide the reliability that we're talking about. Good thoughts. Anything else? Thank you for your input.
Okay. Let's move into reports.
Keep it there. There we go. Our dashboard, just know that they're all there if you want to look at any of our real-time financials or information, solar statistics, all that stuff there. We're getting a good library. You hear me talk about the quick facts. We're really making a good push, and I got to give our marketing group and our management staff some big kudos for the amount of quick facts that we're getting out there. Our goal is to make sure that we have, our story told in questions that are being posed by our members, and link these things when appropriate. I know when I have conversations with a lot of members, I'll basically say, hey, if you're caught up on any of these, and I'll forward the links over. So these are really helpful for, and I know that the board uses them a lot as well. If there's anything we're missing, make sure that you let us know, and we'll develop those with additional topics. Keep going. Engineering is doing great. I mean, this is, our work orders opening. We've had a really good 2025. Like most of our projects, have closeout topics and so forth. And that's what we're experiencing now with our work orders that are still open. Doing a really good job on the construction side. Our crews are doing fabulous. It's really proud of them. Safety is number one for us. You guys have made that really clear since day one, and we always take that very serious. You can really see it as the amount of time worked without a lost time accident in the 200,000. I mean, in the $100,000 hour level has been wonderful. Financial tracking, really interesting. I don't know about you guys, but I didn't really expect everything to be as warm as it's been. Boy, I think that we've had a kind of a warm snap, since for December and now into January. So it's really going to be interesting. Maybe we'll bring that back as a topic of discussion for February if you guys are liking it. I know that we do a good job, and Jay's really helpful of putting together some good statistics through NOAA and some other things. So maybe we'll bring that back, but let's keep going down. The financials are great for budget tracking to close out the year. We'll have the final results in our March meeting, as always, of which time that we also submit the Form 7, the RUS required lender Form 7 that we have, but very consistent with what we reviewed with the board, and a little bit different when it comes to some of the power costs. But overall, the reduction in power costs are offset by the ECA, and we kind of balance our world pretty well. The energy charge adjustment, you kind of see where it's worked really well, and looking forward to that kicking in even more so in 2026 when it comes to the operating margin component added to it. The heating degree days, you can kind of see what I was just referencing. Go down a little bit, and you can see the chart. I always like to look at the visual sight of it. If you looked at the black line, you want to see the black line to be right on that yellow line. If it's below it, then you're seeing a lot of warmth and less power sales that go along with it. So it's been a really interesting time. We better get used to these kind of anomalies. What we're seeing is weather patterns are unpredictable, to say the least, but they flip around really quickly now. And before
Let
they
me jump in and make a comment too, because I want to give a shout out to Jay and all of you that have been looking at this stuff. I had one of those wake up at 2 a.m. sort of thoughts, sort of a thing. So I took our hourly power starting back in 2013 up through 2025 year to date. And this was really cool because this is AI did work for me that I could never figure out how to do, but I got the hourly temperature, wind, and precipitation data too that went wrong for that whole thing. So you got four data elements there. Ran the correlations, and it's to nobody's surprise, the R and R squared numbers are like 0.95. So the shape of our winter is so totally dependent upon the weather in those time periods. So as the weather gets weirder, our ability to forecast that's going to get weirder too.
Yeah, well said, Vince. I mean, we've been tracking this stuff. I think that we do one of the jobs that I can imagine out of most utilities that I talk about their forecasting. A lot of them just look at historical forecasting and predict from there. We do a really good job looking at the weather forecast because everything you're just saying, the weather is huge for us. I like the fact that we're surrounded by water, so it acts as a heating source. The water does in the wintertime, and a little bit of a cooling source in the winter. But when those big giant wind events show up, what are they? And the temperature drops.
Jay has mentioned it before because I was curious too, because it's not just the heat and degree days, but the wind plays a factor in it too. And when you look at that correlation without the wind, it's like a 0.81 or something. But when you include the wind, it jumps up to 0.94, 95. And again, common sense. If the wind's blowing like crazy and it's really cold, the heat transfer out of your house is going to be bigger. You're going to use more power. So that's just to say that I don't think our crystal ball is going to get any clearer going forward as we see, wider variation than the types of weather that we're going to get. So, I mean, it directly impacts our financial ability to figure out what should we be doing.
It directly, I mean, if you scroll back up, it directly affected our equity percentage.
Bingo.
Right? So we ended the year down a percentage from where we wanted to end up equity wise. Which is not a huge deal, I'm sure, but we have to build that equity back up for the submarine cables and all the projects. So
now remember what we're doing in 2026 is knowing this is where we're tying to the margin now to make sure that we have the equity so we could maintain our grid and do some of the reliability estimations or cost incurred for that as well. So I think we're doing the right thing, and I think that we're all going to look back in 26 and fine tune our ECA to be operating margin related will be a big benefit for us to make sure we can get that equity up.
I find it weird that I sit around praying for snow just so that we can.
Right. It's really true. Thanks for that, Vince. Really, this is another graphic that just shows we're getting a little bit warmer. And it's more than just the temperature. It's about the blob. I don't know if you guys remember the last one we had in 2014-15 was a really big warm trend. And it all had to do with the ocean temperatures sitting out front of us and how much that impacted what our weather patterns were. We'll bring that back in February and have a good discussion about it. Energy assist funding. Remember, it's important for us that if we have a rate increase, that we have a counter credit, an addition credit that helps our low income members navigate through what those cost increases are. I think we're dedicated to be doing that, and I think it's worked out really well. And I hope we can get more and more grants like that low income solar grant that we could satisfy even more assistance to our program. So stay tuned for that. We'll keep chasing them. Anyone have any comments there? Our rebates through Bonneville are, you can kind of see what our awards are and the number of accounts that we've been putting in place. So we do a good job there. Interconnection, we're almost 1,000 solar installations in our community. those are high numbers. I don't know if you guys really know, but if you compare to other Washington state utilities, we're off the charts on a per capita basis for the amount of solar we have. It's not the most financial investment, but it's the right thing to do for our environmental, being the environmental epicenter of San Juan. So
What's the equivalent megawatts installed based on that 1,000?
do you know off the cuff, Russell?
We're roughly at no, for total interconnects, I want to make sure that's the
Yeah.
right. We're a little over 6 megawatts of connected solar, but mind you, that's at the peak of production, not
Right.
not right now.
Yeah, not right now, not in the wintertime.
So important, just to comment on that too again. So you get about 1,000 megawatt hours per kilowatt of install, 1,000 kilowatt hours per kilowatt installed per year. I think whatever the magic number is, but it's 1,000. That's not 6 megawatts that's sent back to the grid. There's a net, so it's you subtract out what's used internally and then what gets. So I don't know what the net contribution to the grid is.
We have a dashboard on our energy savings portion of our website that tracks that monthly, showing what the to grid portion only is for
Right.
our member producers, and it also includes the Decatur solar.
Right.
One of the things that we've been talking about, Vince, maybe going forward, I think it'll be a good thing for us to track, is in addition to what Russell just said, if we could make some estimations on what your system on use is, because that's a big benefit as well, then we'll able to get a good gauge on how much the system produces and then the benefits that OPALCO's been providing through our programs like Switch It Up that we're looking at the table right now. I mean, these are large numbers that, if you looked at the ductless heat pump, which are always the bigger ones, we're looking $10 million is the grand total that we have for this duration. And, believe it or not, if you looked at the solar numbers, they're even higher. Solar plus storage, you're looking at over the $10 million mark. So this program really is good. And this is the reason that I always tout it. And the reason that Travis is always trying to get additional, draws is for us to really benefit our members along the lines. But these are really large numbers. And it's all about getting the capital, really low cost capital for our members to take advantage of when it's time, when they can, when a refrigerator goes out or when a heating system goes out, to put in something that's really efficient, and having these available are great. You kind of see what we've accumulated, the 46.8 million, and then what we have remaining now, we're less than half of that is remaining to be drawn down. So we got to start thinking about the next tranche too. Great program though. And I want to thank Travis for all his work he's been doing on the REST program. He basically set it up, and we're now the model for pretty much, the utilities in our area that I know of, being the experts in how to set up the program. So good job, Travis.
Can you comment a little bit about what you think how the process will play out for the next tranche? Likelihood, etc.
I don't know.
Feeling good?
Yeah, Travis, why don't I kind of hand that off to you? Any thoughts?
Yeah, we're working with Eddie and the RUS team right now. The issue has been staffing on his end. We submitted an LOI for another round of RESP. Gosh, was that in May? And we're still waiting to hear back from that. So that we haven't had that kind of delay since we first applied for RESP back in 2016 to 17. So he keeps telling us we're first in the engineering review, and we should hear back from him this week. Our application is very similar to the last 3 tranches, so I see no reason that it wouldn't go through unless there's something on the federal side that's kind of gonna hold RESP back. But we'll let you guys know as soon as we hear any type of news.
Great.
And what we're submitting right now is a large number. We're looking at now. Remember, we don't have to draw it down until we need it, but kind of like a big line of credit for $75 million. So that would be a really good increase to the program for us to take advantage of for years to come. So
That's great.
Got our fingers crossed.
What
And that-
happened? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to add that that next tranche that we're trying to do is really just to set us up for the next 10 years. You look at how much we're financing per year, it's, between 7 and 8 million a year. So, we have 10 years to spend these funds once we get them. So if we get that 75 million, it is sort of the next 10 years of RESP sort of secured. So that would be a really big win.
Huge. Yeah.
Thanks, Travis.
What happened?
I've
to EV
got a
chargers?
question on a
Oh,
couple of line items, if we could just keep that figure up there. The difference between the second line item, energy storage, and then down near the bottom, solar plus storage. We're not double bookkeeping storage in those two lines, are we?
No, one is just literally storage only, and the other one is combined with solar. Most people will put their solar array and then they'll put some battery on it. There's more than a handful of people that just go after storage too. So no double counting there, but we're just trying to track them all to the.
But it's residential storage then, is what
Yeah.
you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember, it has to be the qualifications to be the REST program hopefully evolves a little bit. Hope we can put more measures in here. But it has to be attached to your house, kind of like a loan, right? If you were gonna have, collateral, it needs to be in that category. And we can't do anything like EV cars or that kind of stuff. It has to be attached to the house in order to satisfy the programs.
or business. It has to be attached to the building.
Or business, and we
Because
don't.
we do
we don't.
commercial stuff.
Yeah, we do a lot of business stuff. In fact, a good portion of that ductless heat pump was for a hotel that we have over here on Orcas, the first one.
Mhm.
Communications group has been doing a great job. You kind of see the Center Island effort that we did for the submarine cable. That was a big win. That was both a combination of the ARPA funding project to provide fiber optic capabilities out in Center Island, and it gave us the opportunity to build out a submarine cable that was getting a little bit old and needed to be replaced out there too. So a big win for our Center Island folks. And then board election coming up. I want to thank all you guys for really volunteering your time. Really important to keep Opalco current. I think the world of our think tank and the board. So keep it up. Here's our election stuff that we have. Vince doesn't look like you're going to be. I was almost going to get a letter petition to encourage Vince to continue on, but he's decided to not move forward with the he's put in his time and not going to be looking for re-election, so that's going to leave a board seat open on San Juan. And Shooks, congratulations, Shooks. He's going to put his name back in the hat to run for the Orcas district, so thanks for that. I really appreciate it. And then here's the sequence of events that we're going to be going through. We're going to be kicking that off pretty darn rapid fire going forward. Rock Island's doing fantastic. I can't say enough about the $15 million or close to that we've received in funding to get ARPA funds and get about 1,000 members hooked up. It's occurred on Decatur. It's occurred on Center Island. Those are big wins. And there's other areas within our community that have benefited tremendously. And those additional members have really gotten the ability for us to make sure that we can keep the doors open for Rock Island, and we're doing really great. The guys over there are doing a wonderful job, just onboarding after onboarding. So congratulations to Rock Island.
Super job. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then we have the appendix. If anyone wants to jump into some of the details with Bonneville Power Administration, I can't say enough about them. They're really attentive. They're real supportive of Opalco. We got a lot of really big topics to work through with Bonneville. The biggest one is our submarine cable, that we have 2 submarine cables that are owned by Bonneville that connect us to the mainland. And I'd say both of them are starting to reach the end of their useful lives. One of them is 25-year-old. It's a composite cable. And 25 is a little bit is a little bit older for a composite cable. Our other cable is 40 years old, and it's an oil-filled cable. So in my mind, we got to get that oil-filled cable all squared away and make sure Bonneville really takes it serious. We have a lot of experience. The last cable we pulled up between Lopez and San Juan was oil-filled, and that's something that we need to get out. It's very essential for us, and we've been pushing Bonneville for a while now, and I think they're really starting to pay attention. And be in 2026, we're going to be looking at flyovers with ROV and establish some of the conditions of the cable, so we have a really good plan of attack for replacement. Hopefully, I'd like to have a plan of attack for replacement for both the cables. The most essential one is obviously the 40-year-old cable, though. So stay tuned on that as we progress with Bonneville in our regular meetings that we have set up.
So,
and with this,
Foster, can you comment on the important aspect of this as to who's going to pay for it?
well, it's Bonneville's cable, and they provided us with the cable, and our first cable that we got from Bonneville Power Administration was 1951. And they provided us with, I think these two cables are cable number 4 and 5. So it gets gone from one cable all the way to 5, that they've really stepped up to the plate and make sure that they have replacement programs in place. There's no reason for OPACO to think that anything has changed, at least up until now. And hopefully we don't get any pushback from Bonneville, because it's going to be really crucial for us to make sure. We're talking in somewhere in the $150 million range, Jerry. And our little co-op that we have out here would that's more than all the assets that we're even worth. So
I'm aware of that. That's why I'm concerned.
Yeah. And we also.
So are we dancing around this question more than we should be?
No, we're not. I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in here.
Please do.
There are some confidential attorney-client discussions that can be had around this, Jerry. But in short, looking at Bonneville's obligations, that they've, as Foster rightly pointed out, that they've, more than handsomely fulfilled over time, we expect them to do the same.
Yep.
And their response?
Again, we were in conversation with them, and maybe better to be more detailed, and I'm happy to have any discussions with you about that.
Okay, I would appreciate that.
I think they're, we're in great discussions. We have regular meetings about the replacement of the schedule. It's a long process, Jerry. So if we don't have some of the information that, it's because of disclosure items and some other things that Joel brought up. But I feel pretty good about the team, and we've always been very supported by Bonneville. And I don't want anyone to think that we're not going to be supported by Bonneville going forward in the future. They're a fantastic operation of taking care of us, since that first cable in 1951. And with that,
okay, thank you. We're not going to have to send Brian back, are we?
Yeah.
Brian may have to come out of retirement and then go back.
It's the sacrificial lamb. There we go.
I have to tell you that I knew 4 of the officers who were there, and the other ones have no idea who they are.
Yeah, when Brian went down to the contract signing, it's amazing how things change out over time. We've benefited tremendously from Brian's wisdom coming from Bonneville Power Administration. I can't tell you how many meetings I've come into where the door doesn't seem as open as it needs to be, and I'll throw his name out there and say, "Are you sure?" And then usually it opens up. So Brian's done some really good stuff for OPACO and Bonneville, and we're lucky to have him on our board. And with that, Vince.
Yep, that's it. Okay, it's 10 o'clock. Propose to take a 15-minute break, and then we've got a little extra work we've got to do after that executive session.
Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate everyone's time.
Great. And we'll be back at 10:15.
10:15 it is.